We pick up right where we left off in part one.
One of the things that Route4Me has is what we call the OA tool, which stands for
Operational Assessment Tool.
right, and that's where you can take, and it's used in conjunction with the GPS tracking, where you take the routes that are being driven as verified by the GPS and you bring it into your platform, right? And then you look at what did you actually do, and then the middle evaluation is what?
So what ends up happening is we're looking at the data as it's coming through, and over time, like we kind of start to learn more and more about the way that customer runs their route. So the longer we're looking at it, the better. But we are able to take a look at this is what you did, and then we have a view that's the as is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is we're not going to change the sequence of stops that you did, but we may have found a better path to get from stop 1 to stop 2 and stop 2 to stop 3. And so there could be some time and distance savings just in driving a more effective path through your day without changing the sequence at all, right? And then we'll also take another look and say, well, if we were to take those stops, those 10, 15 stops, whatever it is you did, and we were to build them in the most appropriate sequence to give you the most efficient day to reduce the amount of miles and the amount of time, then it would look like this. And then here's the gap between all three of those scenarios, right? So you have the actual, the kind of what we call the as is with just a little bit of cleanup, and then the optimized, right? And there are times when there for sure we see scenarios where the driver did they did the best possible scenario, really couldn't fix it very much. There may be a very minor change, if any, but there are other times when we see a pretty significant difference. And when you add that up over the course of a fleet, in the course of a week or a month, the savings that could be generated by optimizing can be significant. Now, the OA tool does take into consideration, or it doesn't take into consideration certain things like, if you have time window constraints, and we're not looking across the entire fleet as a multi-vehicle optimization. We're looking at each individual route itself because we don't truly know what's a stop and what's not a stop from a business perspective, right? So we don't know the difference between lunch and Mrs. Smith's sprinkler appointment. So we don't know that. But there is the opportunity, as I had mentioned, to maybe even get, a day's worth of routes, right, from the customer and just run it through, right? I work with, people all the time to do just a quick, hey, let's just suck in what you actually did. And then now we know those are actual stops. And that can be a pretty effective display as well, a little quicker too, because I can run that right away as opposed to waiting for the OA tool to look at it for several weeks. So we're flexible, right? We're here to help businesses make the best possible decision and to get their business operating in the most efficient manner possible.
There's two factors that really kind of come into calculating ROI. We've got the obvious ones of people and vehicles, but understanding your rolling cost per mile is hugely important. And then also the downstream consequence of being able to do more service or do more sales or do more deliveries is that kind of that intangible cost that's out there. So if you can actually go from servicing 9 customers a day to 12 customers a day without adding more vehicles or people, what is that worth to your business? And, in the pest control business back in my day, a service call was worth $25. So, if we could generate $75 more per day per vehicle on 25 different routes, we're talking about a lot of money over the course of a year.
Sure.
That's a game changer in your profitability. That really is.
Absolutely. Depending on the business right now, 3 may not be possible if, each one of your service appointments takes an hour, right? Or an hour and a half or something like that. So those are things you have to take into consideration. And we do that in the tool is we are able to take into consideration the time that you anticipate each of those jobs or services, whatever, to take so that we can, map that most optimal day. So there could be days where maybe you can't get an extra one, but the next day you can get an extra, job or two, or, and to your point, over the course of a week, odds are pretty good that we're going to add the opportunity for you to get to more business with your existing resources. And that is a piece that it's hard for me. I try not to add that into an ROI conversation simply because I can't guarantee that's going to happen. But it is something for a business owner to consider, because if I show them that all of a sudden I can get their stuff done and their drivers are coming back in 7 hours or 6.5 hours every day as opposed to an 8-hour day, and that means they could throw some extra work in there or potentially, go down a vehicle, and there's savings there too, because as you said, the operating cost of running a vehicle, the IRS says is 55 cents. I'm willing to bet you it's a little higher than that when you start talking about a fully loaded work van, or big diesel truck that is, hauling around, equipment and stuff. It's much higher than that. But even at 55 cents, right? If I'm saving you 50 or 100 miles a day, per vehicle in some cases, that adds up in a hurry. And then you throw in your labor rates that you're not having to spend or whatever. It can be significant for sure.
55 cents, just for clarity, is, oil, tires, maintenance, vehicle depreciation. It has nothing to do with labor charges.
Correct.
Of your driver being in that vehicle, the insurance that you're paying, those types of things. So, we typically use about 90 to $1 per mile for an F-150, and then about $1.75 to $2, depending on gas prices, for the big 18-wheelers.
Yeah.
So it can be very significant over time.
Correct.
I haven't seen anybody yet that can't add at least one stop per week. And if you can add one stop per week, whether that stop is only $35, or, if you're doing 4 stops a day and they're worth $300 each, one stop per day, it kind of all averages out as to, the ROI opportunity that you get. And, really, from my personal experience, being in this industry now for over 21 years, your ROI on this is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10x on a monthly basis, if not higher. You might get an initial big bang for your investment, knocking down some vehicles and things like that. But over the long haul, 5 to 10x a month is really what you're looking at, kind of on the light side. And the other thing is, it really ties into how well do you run your fleet today. If you are tech savvy and you spend a lot of time applying logic to how you're trying to, or how you are doing it today, it might take a little bit more to get that ROI, but there are still plenty of fleets that are out there today that are still doing things old school, leaving it up to the technicians to figure things out. That's not their core skill set by any stretch of the imagination. So it's one of those things where that type of environment is going to benefit more. And, quite honestly, the employees at the company I worked for, they were thrilled once they kind of figured this whole thing out. And it was like, I don't have to come back at the end of the day and schedule tomorrow. I mean, I get to go home at 5 instead of going home at 6:30. They, just like, give me my work, let me go do my job. I'll bang it out. And then, I'll go home at the end of the day. And, they really appreciated that change once they kind of got over the some of the questions they had about Mrs. Jones having to be scheduled Wednesday at 2.
Sure.
That all got worked out, and they appreciated it at the end of the day, and it just was a good situation. I believe you had a slide that'll show us some of the industries that you work with.
Yeah, sure do.
While you're pulling that up, I had another question for you. Are you or is your service kind of restricted to just fleets? What else can you track? I mean, field sales that's an interesting one, right? So there's a vehicle, but they may be in personal vehicles, right? The pharmaceutical industry comes to mind as kind of the field sales that might be operating independent outside of a company vehicle, but you're still interested in, are they making their routes? Are they getting to all the offices, still making the right number of drop-ins on the doctor's offices and things?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool the way that the solution works is because there's not only the ability to build the route, in the web interface, but we actually started off as a mobile app solution. And so, we give that customer the ability to deliver that route to a mobile handset, right, to a phone, tablet, iOS or Android, so that the driver has access to that. And so all these phones and tablets all have GPS in them as well. So the really cool thing is we can take data from multiple sources. So not only that customer that has a Fleetistics device in there that's able to capture all the great things that are happening on with that vehicle from a diagnostics and driver behavior and all that good jazz, but we're able to show that vehicle travel path in our UI, so you can see the actual versus plan. But if you have a scenario where maybe they're going to a campus environment where it's a university or a hospital or a big business, complex, and that technician has to get out of the vehicle, we're also monitoring the handset, so you have true end-to-end visibility of where your employee is. So in the case of that pharmaceutical rep that's driving their own vehicle, and maybe the company doesn't feel comfortable in putting a black box in that vehicle for whatever reason, we still can give them some basic understanding of where their vehicle, where their employee is. Now, I obviously can't give them all the cool driver behavior information and all that great reporting, but I can tell them that, the employee was here and this is the path that they took, and give them that actual versus planned, so that they can validate that plan that I executed to make your most efficient day possible, did it actually happen? And then in the mobile environment, I give we give that driver or employee the ability to, they can take pictures to validate something had occurred or didn't occur. This was in the way, I couldn't get in. This gate was locked, whatever. There's, sign on screen for signature capture, for proof of delivery type stuff. You have the ability to put some, basic canned messages in there that are customized to your business, so they can just click, they can freehand text. And everything that's done in this mobile environment is not only time and date stamped and associated obviously with that driver, but it's also geo-stamped. So we know exactly where they were when they did it. So when there's that picture of the vehicle blocking the gate or the gate locked or whatever, and the customer calls up and says, hey, so-and-so wasn't here today, why did they miss us? You have the ability to kind of send over and say, nope, here's a screenshot. They were at your location, and here's, whose, blue pickup truck is that? And they're like, oh, wow. And you've got, again, time, date, and location, so you can validate your driver was where they were supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. This one actually is on the customer, and so you may be able to charge that customer for a revisit, as opposed to having to eat that and then have to go out there again. So there's some opportunities there from the mobile environment that helps not only your field sales folks that don't have a box in their vehicle, but also those, delivery, service techs, whatever, that are out in the field, to give them the information that they need to validate that they're doing the things they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do them.
Right. Very good. Okay. So we will put information in the video notes on, how to learn more about Route4Me, about how to contact Fleetistics if you're interested in Route4Me or GPS tracking telematics. Hopefully this has been an interesting segment for you, so you can start to realize there is another technology out there if you're not familiar with the routing process. And I will say, of all the routing that I've seen over the years, Route4Me just really kind of has made the interface comfortable, is the way I would describe it, in that it looks good, it presents well, it's intuitive, and it's priced in such a way that anybody can afford it, whether you're routing 3 trucks or 300. The opportunity is there to take a look and do the free evaluation using the OA tool to determine whether or not there's opportunities there for some improvement. So reach out to us, and we'd love to hear from you. If you got any questions or comments, leave them below. Hit the like and subscribe button for us, and we'll work to bring you more content around fleet management and efficiency, and how to potentially make you some more money. So appreciate everybody watching, and I hope you have a great day.